Hey, it's your old pal Krusty. I just saw a really fucking cool Krusty the Clown outfit that a dude made by hand. And he's just walking around a Walmart, which is kind of scarier than it should be, to be honest. Now I'm telling you, but it was really cool. I should have probably snuck a picture of it. SpongeBob character tier list from the Tier Zoo. Now you know we're here for some real quality content. No more complaining from the comments section. All right, y'all shut the fuck up. This is top tier shit here. All right, I don't want to hear no more complaints. All right, this is where it's at right here. I think what he's gonna do is to take the actual animals that are in SpongeBob and then relate them to real life things, right? And how they should live in, you know, that like biome, I guess, of Bikini Bottom. That's how they would actually be. So I know there's a wide variety of fish. You know, SpongeBob himself is a sea sponge. Starfish, Patrick the Starfish is obviously a starfish. Sandy Cheeks obviously is a big booty thought. So, you know, this should be a pretty interesting one. Of course, I don't think sea sponges are that top tier, but let's see what Tier Zoo has. Yes, it was. Tier Zoo! Blink. Yeah!
I've been trying to figure out how to do an ocean tier list or fish tier list for a while now.
So
the problem is there's just too many potential builds to include in a single video. So what better way to do it than to artificially restrict the scope of the video to the most well-known fictional server of all, Bikini
That's really
Bottom.
good. That's
While
really
not
smart.
A real place, the characters are based on real animals that have their own special abilities and signature moves, some of which even affect the plot of individual SpongeBob episodes. So which residents of Bikini Bottom and their real-life counterparts are the best in the
When they mix real life with SpongeBob, those are my favorite fucking moments. That show got so weird and that interests me like forever.
Coral Reef meta? As always, we'll start from the bottom and move up from there. So in F tier, we have the underwater squirrel build. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think squirrels are bottom tier in the arboreal.
Yeah, gotta be fucking bottom tier. I'm
telling you. They have the highest mobility bonuses in the game in forests, and their teeth deal bonus damage to structures, making them excellent at bending wooden environments to their will, both in forests and suburbs. However, in the reef meta, squirrels are absolutely bottom tier. And this is evidenced by Sandy's many obvious difficulties overcoming pretty basic properties in an underwater playthrough.
Great episode.
Sandy's powerful regenerating teeth, while normally a major asset, would actually be a huge liability in an underwater playthrough. Not only are they unable to deal any damage when stuck behind a glass helmet, but regenerating teeth eventually start to deal damage to the player when they go unused for a long time.
That's very true.
So Sandy being forced to wear a suit for most of her playthrough is hugely detrimental. The rest of Sandy's stats are solid, but they're contingent more on her suit than anything else. For example, she's got really high defense due to her armor, but a single hit strong enough to crack her armor would easily mean game over for her, meaning she essentially has an HP of 1. Her other best stat is that she's got high intelligence, but there are far better intelligence builds to play in the reef meta, so her tier placement remains low.
I mean, she was smart enough to make that fucking suit, but not smart enough to understand that SpongeBob and Patrick need water. So, you know.
Waste too much time discussing the underwater squirrel build, since it's the most unrealistic build in Bikini Bottom. So let's move on to D tier, where we have the ocean snail build. Now, there are ocean snails that I consider high tier, like the cone snails, which have venomous spears.
Ooh,
however, it's pretty clear that Gary is not one of these.
Phobia of needles. Oh god. Oh god. That makes me feel very cold. Oh, I didn't like that.
He's instead a much more basic jack-of-all-trades style snail. Sea snails have exceptionally high defense levels, but not much else. They're nearly invincible while in their defensive stance, except against players with armor-piercing abilities. But, as we'll see, those abilities aren't uncommon in the reef meta, and as a result, sea snails have bad matchups against much of the rest of this list. In C tier, we have the crustaceans, which seem to comprise a large
Plankton and Mr. Krabs
of the Bikini Bottom.
That explains why they're so fucking scummy, dude. Because they wouldn't survive otherwise. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Player base, including Mr. Krabs, Larry, and Plankton. And yes, Plankton is most likely a type of copepod, which is a small crustacean. All three of these take the basic crustacean build and modify it for their own specific playstyle.
What about Larry the lobster?
Mr. Krabs
is he still fucking whack?
Basic crustacean build, maintaining high defensive stats with relatively low mobility. The Krabs' armor is great at blocking most attacks, although again, armor-piercing abilities are fairly prevalent in the Reef meta, so it's certainly not a foolproof strategy. The Krabs' claws, while not as powerful as the lobsters, are still great at crushing and grabbing other players, something even Mr. Krabs uses to his advantage at times. The lobster is a more offensive take on the crustacean build, having claws that can deal devastating damage in a single pinch or swing.
Oh, he is just fucking him up.
Depicted as the strongest Bikini Bottom resident, and I have to agree, in raw power and for his size, he's number one. The Copepod.
Dude, isn't there an episode where he gets his fucking eye ripped out?
The creature that Plankton is based on obviously lacks any form of defense and has extremely low HP, being easily defeated by stray blows that weren't even directed at him. The Copepod's best stat would be stealth, which helps Plankton in a lot of his efforts to invade enemy bases, but also frequently ends up hurting him when he's trampled on because he was stepped on by a player that didn't detect him. One special ability I don't see mentioned in the show is the Copepod's team strategy with the bacterium Vibrio cholera, which causes cholera, a damage over time effect that has scored countless wins against entire settlements of human players. While all three of these rank about the same on my tier list, I think it's safe to say that the lobster would win most frequently in a duel with the other crustaceans.
Okay.
But how about Crab versus
Plankton? It's a high
Plankton?
tier C.
Countless times, Mr. Krabs is depicted defeating Plankton in battle, but only once is this battle a legal one rather than a physical one. And while I generally agree with the show's depiction of the physical battles, I can't really comment on how a battle would play out if it took place in a courtroom.
So now you're bringing the law into this as well? It's the lawyer guy! How did you get in contact with the lawyer guy?
Tirzu needs me.
But
Objection!
Objection!
Well, the thing about the Krabs versus Plankton case is how close it gets to real-life law.
Also, that dark green tie is fire flame, my boy.
I should know because I've beaten the bar exam final boss on hard mode in New York and God mode in California. See, a restaurant owner like Mr. Krab can be liable to his patrons if he's negligent. Negligence requires four things: a duty between the parties, a breach of that duty, causation between the breach and the harm, and damages.
This is fucking flame. This is a fire flame combination between video game and law. This is crazy good.
So his lack of a wet floor sign is pretty bad.
I don't deserve to be watching this.
And a reasonable restaurant owner
Holy
would
shit.
probably put out a sign or not have the floor soaking wet in the first place. But Krabs doesn't owe the same duty to a trespasser like Plankton. Plankton wasn't there to buy food. He was there to steal the Krabby Patty. Krabs probably didn't owe him a duty and wouldn't be liable to him in negligence, even if Plankton wasn't faking his injuries. I'm sorry, Krab. I go into far more detail on my own channel, where I explain how all of your favorite characters are probably breaking the law. Otherwise, you can probably find me playing the MMORPG World of Lawsuits in the professional Anthropocene server as Legal Eagle Rules.
Dope.
Thanks, Legal Eagle.
Dope.
At the bottom of B tier, we have the Starfish build. The Starfish build is one of those builds which spends very little evolution points leveling its stats, instead pouring all of them into extremely unique abilities. Their first ability is their Suction Cups, an ability they share with the Cephalopod faction. This gives them an extremely strong grip, granting them almost total immunity to knockback moves, and making their own grab attacks borderline impossible to mash out of. That second effect combos nicely into their second ability, their Extendable Stomach. This unique acid-based grapple attack deals devastating damage to anything it succeeds in catching. It bypasses armor and can defeat enemies far larger than the Starfish given enough time. However, it's got a lot of startup lag, so the Starfish needs to make sure it's got a secure grip on the target. This ability makes the Starfish one of the best anti-tank builds in the game, since they can pry open the armor of builds like the Clam and Scallop, and then inflict toxic damage, basically melting them from the inside with acid.
And they can just take as much time as they need to. They don't need to move fast.
Starfish's final and perhaps most impressive ability is their HP regeneration, which is stronger than any other health regen perk in the entire game.
That's very true.
Being able to completely regenerate their HP from attacks that would spell game over for most other builds. As impressive as the Starfish's abilities are, its stats leave a lot to be desired, having an intelligence level near 0 and a mobility level on par with that of a snail. But in the right player's hands, the Starfish build can go much further than you might expect. Next on the tier list is the Sponge build, the easiest creature to play in the entire game.
Because you just have to sit around and filter food.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of the Sponge build, since it's a build catered towards the playstyle of literally AFKing. Sponges gain XP by filter feeding, and thus don't require any decision making or active attention at all to do well.
Hey.
Sponges have a mobility, attack, stealth, and intelligence stat of 0. They don't move, hunt, think, or hide from their enemies. They just sit there and accumulate free XP from the debris in the water. Since they have 0 ability to react to attacks from enemy players, you'd think they would be easy pickings for everyone, and not fare well at all in the current meta. Normally this would be the case, however sponges are worth negative XP to most other builds, because they've incorporated tiny shards of glass into their bodies that damage players trying to feed on them. Some sponges also have an AoE toxic debuff active, lowering the incentive to attack them even further. Some builds, like the Sea Turtle, have resistance to these sorts of countermeasures, and can derive some benefit from attacking sea sponges. But even then, their efforts are better spent on more high-value targets, like jellyfish, snails, and seaweed. So in summary, sponges are upper mid-tier because they simply aren't worth the effort to fight.
Dude, how about instead of being worth food, I just become glass? Or poison. Huh?
And
You like that?
ease of gameplay means they pretty much always succeed in the reef meta. Not exactly a build I'm excited to sing the praises of, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't fairly assess them.
Word.
In A tier, we've got the Octopus build.
Yeah,
the
Octopus
is a hybrid
great.
between a stealth-based build and an intelligence-based one, having exceptionally high levels in both stats. They've got the shapeshift and color change ability that lets them get the camouflage stealth bonus in just about any environment.
Oh, that's so
and
fucking
their
cool to
intelligence
see.
lets them solve problems using tools and learn new skills by observation. Disappointingly, in the show, Squidward isn't really shown to use the color change ability much. Another thing not shown in the show is that every octopus is at least somewhat venomous. Venom is a powerful tool for taking down
What do you mean? Squidward is toxic as hell on that show.
and since even a single bite can deal the venom effect for massive damage, Venom is also quite effective for pressuring attackers to steer clear. Their suction cups give them a powerful grip, and to be perfectly honest, the octopus is essentially a superior version of the Starfish. In addition to having suction cups, multiple arms, regenerative abilities, and venom, the octopus build also gets access to tons of high-level abilities like tool use, shapeshift, and inkjet. The Starfish does have one advantage over cephalopods, in that its lifespan is significantly longer. The top tier resident of Bikini Bottom is significant. The Starfish does have one advantage. Resident of Bikini Bottom is
3 to 5 years. That's not long at all.
The pufferfish build is a
I thought they lived way longer than
on the
that.
basic fish
Wow.
class that spends all of its points unlocking not one, but 2 separate high-level defensive abilities and 1 offensive ability. Those being the Spike Ball and Neurotoxin on defense, and Armor-Piercing Beak on offense. The Spike Ball ability deals damage to the attacker whenever they connect a physical strike on you, and switching to the ball stance also makes bite and grab attacks less accurate
Really
against you.
hard, yeah.
This ability is great for countering most of the common threats in the reef meta, and its only drawback is that it reduces the pufferfish's speed while it's active. The pufferfish build doesn't really care about losing speed, since it doesn't really rely on speed for escaping or attacking, so it's a great trade. Its second defensive ability, Neurotoxin, ensures that builds in higher weight classes can't just swallow it whole without risk too. The Neurotoxin would paralyze any player who actually managed to get past its first line of defense. Honestly, having 2 separate measures of defense is a bit
That's
overkill,
really cool.
but considering the pufferfish manages to also have a solid offensive capability too, I won't knock it too much. Speaking of, the pufferfish is another extremely effective tank buster build.
These are
It has
so
teeth that
awesome.
absolutely destroy armor, meaning defensive builds like the clam, crab, and snail get demolished in matchups against the pufferfish.
It
This
looks like it has
impressive
like little
blend of
buck teeth in there is what it looks like. I
defense
know it's
and
a beak.
offense makes the pufferfish one of the best fish builds in the game, in my opinion, and easily the top tier of Bikini Bottom. It's no wonder Mrs. Puff is shown bodying
Bow.
basically everyone in the show.
That's actually really fucking exciting that other things are coming up. It's actually kind of surprising where we ended up. You knew SpongeBob and Patrick couldn't be A or S tier in that meta. But for Mr. Krabs to be that, or for Larry the Lobster to be that low is like really surprising to me. But Mrs. Puff being at the top of the list, I did not see that shit coming. But I'll holler at you guys in the next one, yo. Peace.